I go out jogging by myself, it feels like I can go somewhere that's just like a break, like a little vacation kind of. Just a break from any of the stress or feelings that I might have been feeling that day. Without running, I wouldn't be where I am right now. I work and I run for Native people. Wiats eskechat Rosalie Fish seatsta Muckleshoot Abshed. Hello, my name is Rosalie Fish and I'm from the Muckleshoot tribe. I grew up around Muckleshoot and I went to Muckleshoot Tribal School. I've been doing coastal jams and canoe paddling as long as I can remember. We did powwows too. I did fancy dance powwow for a long time. We have a division called Tiny Tots, and I did that. It was something that I didn't realize how much it meant to me until I got a little bit older. It was just something that was part of my life, that was part of my schedule. I suddenly knew what it meant as I got older. It's a connection to my ancestors and to my traditions, and it can be really healing for me to know that people have fought for me to be able to do these things. I started running in middle school. I didn't really like it as much then, just because I didn't know what it could do for me. I didn't really think I was that good at it. And then when I went to tribal school, running meant something else. I would show up to meets and people thought that I wouldn't do well. And there were these non-native schools and they would look down on us. Muckleshoot Tribal School, we had a basketball game and there was a confrontation on the court. And then when that team had left, they wrote "Dirty Indian Savages" all over our walls. They said like all kinds of graffiti that was really demeaning and racist. And that's the kind of tone that I can get sometimes, running from a native school with a native uniform. And so for me to be able to put in the work at practice and then show up and exceed these people's expectations of me, when I could go and prove them wrong and say, you're wrong about natives and you're wrong about me, that was something that nobody could take away from me. That's why I kept running. Growing up, you kind of slowly begin to normalize Native women in your community going missing or being murdered or just being gone. Murder is the third leading cause of death for Native women. And what really makes Native women so vulnerable to this issue is that intersectionality between being a woman and being a Native American.
MMIW is an acronym for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. Over 80% of Indigenous women will face some type of violence within their lifetimes.
A lot of people still don't know what MMIW is, and I think that's due to the lack of visibility that Indigenous people have. And that's something that has been really hard, and specifically a key factor in the MMIW epidemic is that neglect and invisibility. I didn't learn about the MMIW movement. I learned that what was happening had a name, it had an acronym. When I saw Jordan Marie Daniel, it was a picture of her with the red handprint and the acronym down her leg. Yeah, she ran at the Boston Marathon. She dedicated each of her 26 miles to a murdered or missing Indigenous woman, and she prayed for them as she ran. I was so shocked because she was a Native woman in a running uniform. The fact that she had paint on and she was representing and advocating and doing something more with her running than just empowering herself, it really opened my eyes. I need to do something more too. And I really admire her, I still do, and she's really one of the most amazing people I know. then I realized when I saw Jordan Marie Daniels run with the paint that I could combine my Native culture and I could combine, how I felt about MMIW. I could combine that with my running that empowered me, and I could use that as a platform. So for my final track meet at Eastern Washington University, I ran 4 events, and for each of the finals, I ran with a red handprint and MMIW down my right leg. The red handprint over my mouth was to represent murdered and missing Indigenous women and the women that have been silenced through violence. And the MMIW was the acronym for that. I ran the 1600 meter for Alice Looney, the 800 meter for Jacqueline Salyers, the 3200 meter for Renee Davis, and the 400 meter for Misty Upham. The 1600 was really difficult because it was the first race I ran with the paint. And it was because it was for someone that was related to me. My aunt, Alice Looney. I was young, but I remember how my aunts would talk about her and how she cooked all the time and how she loved cooking for everybody. And how one day she just went missing and was taken. They looked for her for over a year, my Aunt Caroline and my Auntie Mary. And then when she was finally found, it was a really just stressful moment to know. Nobody knows still what happened exactly. And though while they're grateful to have her home and to not be looking anymore, it's still really damaging to know that over a year, nobody knows what happened to her. When I think about, my aunt, I think about my sister and my other aunties who are all affected by that. And that really was something difficult, to think about while I was running. And when I crossed the finish line at a way slower time than I expected, I didn't know what was going on. I felt like I didn't give everything I had. I felt like I let people down. And then it wasn't until I talked to Jordan that night and she told me that what I was feeling was normal and that she had experienced something like that when she had ran with the paint. And with that, it really changed my perspective on how I was running these times and these races. And it really wasn't about the times anymore. I ran my 3200 meter for Renee Davis and her unborn son, Masi. And she was 6 months pregnant at the time with Masi. A community member called for a welfare check, and then when the police arrived, they shot her in front of her 2 children. And from what Native people have seen, police don't care about Native lives. They don't care about Native women. She was shot on the Muckleshoot Reservation, and that's home to me. And to know that she was taken from home was really difficult to think about. My 3200 was by far one of the hardest races I ran. That I was not only running for her, but I was running for Masi. And it was 8 laps of thinking about her and her family and praying for her peace and her rest. And it was very emotional just because of how close she was. She was a Muckleshoot tribal member.
I dedicated my 800 race to Jacqueline Salyers. Jacqueline Salyers was from the Puyallup tribe, and she was shot and killed in Tacoma when police were trying to arrest her boyfriend. She was pregnant at the time and she had children. By the time that I got to the 800, it felt more so like my responsibility. All the nerves had gone away, and it was really stepping up to the line and knowing that I had a job to do, and that this was way bigger than how my legs felt or how tired I was.
Well, I need to represent this person, and I need to represent them with grace and honor, and I need to be humble about my actions.
I dedicated my 400-meter race to Misty Upham, whose disappearance and finding really impacted me as I was growing up, especially being on the Muckleshoot Reservation. Misty was a member of the Blackfeet Nation and a successful actress who starred in Frozen River, which made it to the Golden Globes. She was found deceased on the Muckleshoot Reservation where I live, after going missing for 11 days. The police hadn't looked for her, and when Muckleshoot members finally found her, the police mislabeled her death as a suicide. After my 800-meter run, I was absolutely exhausted and emotionally very heavy.
Right before my last race for Misty, my coach told me, "Remember why you're doing this?" He said, "I know your legs are tired. I know you don't want to run anymore." He said, "I know you just want to break, but you don't care about any of that. I want you to think about your little sister, Solstice, and my girls, Khalil and Niala, and all of the Native girls and women that are depending on you right now. And I want you to run for them, and I don't want anything left." It was kind of hard not to tear up. And I ran out there, and for a second, I thought, I have nothing left. I'm gonna come in third. And I sprinted. I couldn't even feel my legs at that point.
I knew that I had to use everything I had left to represent her fairly and to give her the effort that she deserved.
When I finished my races, I really just felt sad. I felt upset when I thought about, even though that I was able to honor and pray for the women, at the same time it didn't change what happened. But I knew that I needed to raise awareness, and the only way to change something that's happening is to acknowledge it first, to acknowledge that it's a problem.
And I'm here today because every day in this city, in this land, in this state, in this nation, our matriarchs are dying, and they're dying of violence that is based on one thing, that they are Indigenous women living in a country built on genocide with continuing colonization that results in the historical trauma where our women are dying. The voices that should be singing at every one of our ceremonies, the hands that should be cooking the food to serve the next generations, the thoughts and the prayers that allow for our next generations to continue. These are the people that we are losing every single day. As we cry together, as we laugh together, as we fight fiercely together, we have determined that this will no longer continue. And I want to raise my hands to the incredible Deborah Juarez, our councilwoman, our tribal member, our loved one, who has pushed us to the forefront, because right now what you have the opportunity to pass is the very first legislation in the country with real measurable outcomes. We will lead, not only here in Seattle, we will lead this state, and we will show the rest of this country the way that it should be done, because our voices will not be silent. We will sing those songs again, and our women will be present.
For me, the murdered Indigenous woman started in my family in their mid-60s. My sister was murdered here in the city of Seattle with no investigation. Her body was brought back to Muckleshoot Indian tribe and buried. To this day, every day I think of my sisters, and she's not the only one in my family who has been murdered with no investigation.
I lost one of my good friends in the 1980s. She never came home to the Muckleshoot Reservation. She left our home in Tacoma, Washington, in the city, trying to make it home and never made it home. So that day left an open heart, left an open hole in my heart forever.
My aunt Geraldine Naha Hendrickson was murdered in downtown Seattle 21 years ago.
Because I come from Yakima. I'll explain this real quick. We had, from the mid-70s to the early 80s, we had over 29 women who were murdered on my reservation.
On a personal note, I would like to say that I did have a niece who was murdered about 5 years ago. So these really do come to our people.
My goddaughter, Maria Flores, is missing. We're doing everything we can to find her. She's a missing child. She's 17, and it wouldn't matter if she was 40-something. We would still go through the same process. We're finding out what doors we can go through and what doors we need help opening, such as the FBI, military, CID. It's an interesting process, and I wouldn't wish this on anybody.
What I wanted was hard-cut legislation that says and directs SPD to hire and work with Native communities, Native governments, Native organizations when Native women go missing, actually have someone that has subject matter expertise, data analysis, and works with Native American organizations where their only job is to serve Native people. And that's what we did.
Any other council members like to say a few words? Or I think in this situation, the power of our silence means how much we support you and what you've brought to us and the community. So I think we should have, our silence is powerful in this. And I've never seen this before. So thank you. Okay, let's vote. Those in favor. Those in favor of adopting the resolution, please vote aye. Aye. Those opposed, vote no. The motion carries. The resolution is adopted. The chair will sign.
We're going to provide resources. We're going to show our commitment, not only our civic commitment, but a moral commitment and responsibility that when Native women go missing, we go look for them.
I have Native women in my life who need change to happen. I have Native girls in my life that are depending on this change to happen. The paint catches your attention, and that's all we need at times, is to just catch your attention, to just listen for a second, to just look at me for a second so that I can tell you what's going on. You know, running with the paint changed my life. It was really powerful, and it really did change my perspective on running. It changed running for me forever.
The missing and murdered Indigenous peoples crisis is an issue that I hold close to my heart and have made a priority even before I was elected to serve in Congress.
Hello, my name is Rosalie Fish, and I'm from the Cowlitz tribe.
Yahi, 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 yahi,